Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Hello, kids. It's Wednesday night. It's fantasy football time, and that means it's time for the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour here on Late Night Sports Radio. I am Keith Grieve from 87sportsfans.com. I am simply the navigator, folks. The pilot on this ship is Mr. Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek himself from thefantasygreek.com. Jim, happy Wednesday.
Hey, Keith, happy Wednesday to you. But I really do think you are the pilot on this show.
Yeah. I just hit the buttons. I hit the buttons and I pick the rejoins. Pretty much, it's all I really bring to the table here. But hey, what can you do?
Yeah.
So, folks, we are continuing our Path to Your Draft series here on the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour. And if at any time you have any questions, comments, concerns, random thoughts, you can give us a call in and take part in the process here. Talk to us specifically, and that phone number is 585-633-7487, 585-633-7487, or you can tweet with the hashtag AskTFG, and we will get to your issue/question whenever we can, as soon as we possibly can. So. And one last, we're here in the middle of August, here towards the end of August, and everyone's either drafting or drafting soon. And if you haven't gone to Amazon.com and scored yourself a copy of the Fantasy Greeks Fantasy Football Draft Guide, you need to keep us playing in the background and go ahead and do that right now. It gives you free access to the Skybox part of the fantasygreek.com, and that will give you up-to-date rankings, keeping up with all the injury news. Lord knows there's been a bunch. Rankings that might change, up-to-date news and notes. And when you're trying to set that Week 1 lineup and get your season off on the right foot, is an absolutely invaluable tool. So once again, Amazon.com, the fantasygreek.com's Fantasy Draft Guide. All right. Wow, that was a mouthful.
That really was, Keith. You did a good job.
All right, so we'll start with the tight ends. Then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll head up the kickers here. So, Jim, the tight end is kind of a murky position. Like we've talked every time we've talked about a position on the program, we've talked about your overall strategy on a tight end. I mean, it really depends on your league. No, I mean if you have to have a tight end, does that play with whether you're I guess maybe this should be a comment for later in the show, but if you need a tight end, should you maybe take a tight end before maybe a second or third wide receiver, depending on the format?
I think that, yeah, depending on your format, if you're in a league that flexes, like I'm in one league where you're required to play one wide receiver and then the next two wide receiving spots are really flex spots for a wide receiver or a tight end, therefore you don't have to have a tight end on your roster at all. If you have a dedicated tight end position, I would say that you could take your tight end before your second wide receiver, definitely your third. There's really only 5 tight ends that are worth drafting before round 6, and we'll talk about them in a second. And after those 5, it's not that you won't have tight ends to draft, but the uncertainty that surrounds each of those tight ends and what they'll be able to do over the course of the season is something that sort of will loom large a little bit. But if you don't get those top 5, obviously your approach is to keep your roster top heavy with TD scorers, and then when it's appropriate, go get the tight end and get yourself the best team possible, given your draft position.
All right. So without further ado, number 10 on the old tight end list. Who
Actually, let's start at the top, Keith.
Oh, you want to start at number 1?
I do, because I think it'd be easier to talk about the top 5 and then talk about the next 5.
Okay. Changing things mid-season here. Okay, that's just kidding. Just a joke. Number 1, who you got?
Well, I think this is the hands-down favorite, Rob Gronkowski. He's almost a surety to score every game that he plays. He's a 1,200-yard type of receiver, potentially, well, double-digit TDs for sure, potentially up to 16. He's going to be off fantasy boards at the beginning of the second round. That's exactly where you take him. He's got an injury issue, but it's just, he's too good to pass up. So if you're going to go running back and then Rob, that's fine. If you're going to go wide receiver, tight end, that's fine. He's the man at number one. No questions asked.
And I kind of like the addition of Scott Chandler to be the second tight end. When the Patriots offense was really at its best was when they ran those kind of hybrid two tight end sets. And Scott Chandler is no Aaron Hernandez by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not trying to say that in any way. But if they trot out those sets again, Chandler's not somebody that defenses can ignore, like maybe a Tim Wright was last year or anything like that. So you're going to end up with Gronkowski in more one-on-one matchups in the middle of the field than probably we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. I guess would be my opinion. So,
yeah, they're adding pieces wherever they can, but Rob Gronkowski is the focal point of that passing offense.
Okay. All right, number 2.
Well, number 2, people are going to – everybody's got Jimmy Graham. I think there's an argument that could be made. It could be Travis Kelce. But let's go with Jimmy Graham, if only because we know the talent is there. We know that he's a red zone threat. He's a guy that should put up 800 to 1,000 yards and roughly 8 TDs. It would behoove me to sit here and see Russell Wilson play in that offense and not use Jimmy Graham regularly, given his great skill catching the football. I think he's the hands down number 2 tight end, somebody you should be able to get in round 3 again. In that instance, you'll probably pick him up after you've gotten your top running back and top wide receiver.
Yeah, you think about everything he was able to do with the high-flying Saints, and you say, well, now he goes to a much more conservative offense in Seattle. He's not going to be the same kind of player he is. I totally disagree. He's a complete package in the end zone. And when you have an offense that kind of grounds and pounds normally with Marshawn Lynch and kind of chugs and gets into that red zone, that's the perfect time with a play action pass and if it's a zone read and rolling out Russell Wilson or whatever, Jimmy Graham's going to benefit from all of those red zone touches. And, that's kind of where I'm looking at it. So,
sounds good.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you.
Yay!
Yay!
Woo-hoo us. All right, number 3.
All right, number 3, I actually had, and I mentioned Travis Kelce, but I think there's a genuine argument now to go ahead and take Greg Olsen ahead of him. Once Kelvin Benjamin went down to injury, somebody's going to have to make up that 1,000 yards and 60 receptions and 8 TDs, and clearly not all of it's going to go to Greg Olsen, but I got to think a couple hundred yards are going to. He's going to be the focal point of their passing offense, and I like that. And I think Greg Olsen should go third, and you can wait on him. You can wait until the 5th round to actually go pick him up.
Yeah, he's like exactly what you said. Benjamin going down is a big blow to that offense. You go back to 2 seasons ago when Cam Newton didn't have Benjamin and was forced to throw to a bunch of also-rans, kind of like he is now. And unless Devin Funchess makes some kind of giant leap, which nobody's really expecting, Olsen should be the main benefit. I think he's going to be a monster as long as they get in the red zone.
He won't be able to do it alone,
right?
But he's going to have these games where he's outstanding, and that to me is plenty of reason that he deserves one of the top 3 slots.
I would agree, sir. All right. All right, number 4.
Number 4, that's Travis Kelce for sure. Another guy that you can get in the 5th round. He is easily going to be earmarked to 800 to 1,000 yards, 8+ TDs. He was Alex Smith's go-to guy last season, and Alex Smith has already shown that he's still got the chemistry with the guy in the preseason, and I just have no reason to think otherwise. Certainly Jeremy Maclin should get some looks in this offense, and obviously Jamal Charles will be the focal point, but Travis Kelce should be picking up his share over the course of the season, and he's easily a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, it's hard to or easy to forget that last year he wasn't a starter week 1.
No, it wasn't. He actually shared time with Anthony Fasano, and what helps him tremendously is the fact Anthony Fasano's gone, and Travis Kelce, he's it.
Yeah, from week 13 on, he was 7th in the NFL in targets among tight ends.
That's utterly amazing.
Yeah. No, it's that is, and you think about Alex Smith in Kansas City. He's not a push the ball down the field kind of guy. He's a check down quarterback. And eventually those checkdowns come back to the tight end. So it seems to be that this is an offense, by default, because of Alex Smith and how careful he usually is with the football, that he's just going to be dumping it an awful lot. So, yeah. Number 5.
Number 5, moving up the ranks due to injury, Martellus Bennett. I mean, without Brandon Marshall, now Kevin White, Martellus 2 on the target board for the Bears, right behind Alshon Jeffrey. I think he's earmarked for 800 to 1,000 yards, 6 to 8 TDs, another certain top 5 tight end. Go draft him, and you'll be able to get him likely in the late fifth round.
Yeah, the Bears are supposed to get back to a run-focused offense, and with that, you immediately think play-action passing, and with a player like Martellus Bennett, who was the number 1 targeted tight end last year in the NFL, granted it was with a pass-happy offense, he's a tremendous talent, and when he's on and things are clicking, he's just a beast. It's a shame that the Bears are going to be thin at wide receiver, this year, because it would be really nice to see what this offense would be able to do fully stacked, focused on Matt Forte. It would be really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I mean, that would be completely awesome if that were the case, but it's not. So Martellus should shine.
All right, number 6.
Now, this is where I explained things get a little bit murky. And they get murky because it's really sort of difficult to – the guys we're going to talk about, you can say something about them. They're going to put something up, but are they going to be good enough to push to be top 5? That remains to be seen, and some things need to happen that the preseason is not going to give it to us, not directly. So let's start off with my number 6 guy, and that's Jason Witten of the Dallas Cowboys. Last year he spent a ton of snaps in line, just blocking, didn't do a lot of receiving. This year, with all the issues that we anticipate them having at the running back position, we should see a Dallas Cowboy team that passes more. And part of what we've seen already in the preseason is Jason Witten getting involved in the passing game, where he's already caught 11 balls for 134 yards. So that's sort of, I expect that to continue into the regular season. If he's not, their second guy in terms of receptions, he certainly will be their third guy, and that's why I like him at number 6 right now.
Okay, it was funny because I was looking at the depth chart on our lads, and you see Jason Witten, 2003 was his rookie year. And he just keeps performing. Last year he was 10th in targets, and he had the third best drop rate of tight ends that qualified. So he's a sure-handed option for Tony Romo. Yes, they've got Des Bryant. They've got that fantastic offensive line that either Darren McFadden or Joseph Randle should be able to be decent depending on who's out of jail and who's healthy. So Witten is going to eat. He just is, and like you said, in the preseason we've already seen that. So hopefully it continues. And it's funny because I did a mock draft earlier today, and I didn't need a tight end. Our league doesn't necessarily mandate a tight end, but I was like in my third to last round, and Witten's still there. And it's like, yeah, if it works out like that in real life, absolutely, that would be a great pick. But, all right, number 6 or 7.
Number 6. Here's the guy that everybody poo-hooed in the preseason, and now you kind of have to look at him and sort of say, hey, maybe he may not be a bad pick after all, because even though his touchdowns may go down, he should still be heavily targeted in the offense, and that's Julius Thomas of the Jaguars.
See, I'm still. It relies a lot on Blake Bortles.
It does. It does.
Everything revolves around that offense and Blake Bortles.
It does, but I mean, here's the thing: as I said, this next group of 5, none of them are clean. There's nothing. You could always sit there and say something sort of bad or something has to happen for the projection to play itself out. But at the end of the day, Blake Bortles has got to pass the football. He's got to make a 10 to 15 yard throw, and one of those people he'll be making it to is Julius Thomas, and it'll be around the red zone too. I know he's got a broken hand right now, but supposedly he's going to be just fine, come the start of the season. And you have to assume that that's true. And, he's got the potential to be that kind of a tight end.
Okay. I'm hoping you're wrong because I traded him already in my league, but that's okay. So, all right, number 7.
Too bad for you.
Yeah, right. I got a first-round pick out of him. So.
Oh, geez. Well, that's pretty amazing. You mean number 8, right?
Number 8. That's what I meant. You knew it.
All right, we're gonna go with Jordan Cameron at this point, and I mean, he's joining an offense where, thank God, they've got a good quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, so we should certainly be able to get him the football, especially in the red zone. Sort of the excuses are up. I mean, if he can't flourish in this offense, I don't think that he can flourish anywhere. But that having been said, sort of one of the drawbacks in this offense is the fact they've got a roster full of playmakers. Jarvis Landry is certainly Ryan Tannehill's favorite target. They look like they're going to have a good rushing game now that Lamar Miller is sort of coming around and having established himself as an offensive weapon. Followed up by J.J. and Damian Williams. Then you got Greg Jennings and who else we got? We got Devontae Parker. Am I missing somebody? Oh, I am. Kenny Stills.
Yes, Kenny Stills.
So, I mean, can we name anybody else to sort of get on the field and score a touchdown? So that's the only concern, sort of, will he get washed out of this offense? But in the meantime, I think you got to look at it and say, he's a 600 to 800 yard guy, 5, 6, 7 touchdowns.
Jordan Cameron last year, number 3 in yards per pass route run for Cleveland. They had a revolving door as a quarterback last year.
Yeah, but how many receptions did he have?
Targeted 42 times.
Okay, so it's under 42 receptions. Yeah.
So,
I mean, with that same number, he should be able to get into the end zone a little bit more in this offense.
Right. Yes, I would agree. My point being is it's a small sample with Cameron last season, but their quarterbacking, even though Tannehill's got a lot of growth to in his future that he needs to show, it's still better than whatever Cleveland was trotting out last year. All right, number 9.
This guy, he's ascended in these rankings for me based on what I'm seeing in the preseason right now, and that's Kyle Rudolph of the Minnesota Vikings. He's healthy. He's running well. Teddy Bridgewater isn't scared to throw him the football and go get 10, 11 yards. And eventually what we'll see this do is, once Adrian Peterson gets onto the field, we should see Kyle Rudolph being able to do a little bit more in terms of the passing, but he'll also end up being a red zone target. I think this is his opportunity to, the last couple of years we've talked about, hey, Kyle Rudolph, get healthy and be a top tight end. I think this is his opportunity to be a top 10 tight end. Certainly the arrow is pointing that way with some of the things that we're seeing. So I've got to put him in there at number 9.
Okay. Bridgewater is up and coming. He's the next big thing. So, everyone's assuming he makes certain strides in year number 2. And with young quarterbacks, usually a tight end is a beneficiary of the growing pains because it's a safe outlet usually, somewhere close, somewhere over the middle in the quarterback's eyes for the most part, not all the time obviously. So that is Rudolph may be one of the fantasy sleepers, bigger fantasy sleepers this year in Minnesota.
I hope he's more than just a sleeper, Keith.
And I say sleeper because even if Bridgewater is as good as advertised, it's still the Minnesota passing offense.
Right.
We all know Adrian Peterson's going to be a beast. But yes, Bridgewater had a nice end to his rookie season last year. But I need to see it, for a full season when defenses are really game planning for you and the tape catches up to you. It's still a little buyer beware, but that's the only reason why I use that term sleeper for Rudolph and really Bridgewater as well. Number 10.
All right, here's a guy that he's ascended for me just based on sort of his situation, and that's Tyler Eifert of the Cincinnati Bengals. The reports out of camp are positive. He's catching everything that's thrown his way. It was a similar report last year, right before he got hurt. Jermaine Gresham is gone. He is going to be the tight end for this team in the passing game, as well as an inline blocker. And, you got to look at it and say that he should be the second most targeted player on the team in terms of the passing game. And everything points to him breaking into this top 10, top 12 as a tight end, and therefore he should be drafted as such.
Last year, Gresham for the Bengals was targeted 78 times. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So
some
of those have to fall Eifert's way, you would think.
You would think. And, again, this is one of these things we're talking about a player. The arrow is pointing that way, but we will not, we're not going to know until it actually happens. So I'm one of these people that right now, when I look at this back half of the top 10, even if we started talking about number 11, number 12, 13, 14, what you may end up experiencing in your draft, if you're a person like me that typically only drafts one tight end, and then, I get a tight end for a bye week, whenever that should happen, you might end up playing the waiver wire for the back half of the top 10 tight ends. So you may pick up a Jason Witten and find out something's not exactly that you expected, or better, one of the other tight ends that goes undrafted ends up being a huge cog into their offense that nobody really expected, or they didn't know how big they would be in the offense. And, a couple of the tight ends we could talk about right now are going to be, for example, Richard Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. With Jordy Nelson out, Rodgers should get more looks in the offense, but the question is how much. Is he going to go from a 250-yard catching tight end to a 600 or 800? That remains to be seen. 400, 500 sounds like it might make more sense, but he certainly is in a position, certainly has the talent to do better. Owen Daniels is in a position to make some noise, but what cuts against him is the competing interests of Virgil Green. It's really hard to say which one of them is going to dominate, if either, but one of them could. And should that happen, you might be running out to pick him up off the waiver wire.
Okay.
Oh, somebody I want to talk about, sort of keep him in mind in your draft, do not forget about him, is Antonio Gates. He's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season, but when he gets back, he should be not just a target machine, or target receptacle, whatever you want to call him. He should be scoring you some touchdowns. So if you can get him, let me see where he's going right now. If you can get him with a later round pick, you should be able to get him, let's see, in the 12th, 13th round of your draft. That's outstanding. So if you get one of these tight ends you're not so sure about, but keep it in mind to go get Gates towards the end of your draft.
Okay. Can I, before we go to break here, can I just throw out some random names and you tell me what your thoughts are on them now?
Sure.
Totally catching you off guard. I love to do that.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Well, you mentioned Antonio Gates. So what does that mean for Ladarius Green? Is that like a mandatory handcuff if you're drafting? If you get Ladarius Green during the suspension, you got to get Gates so you don't miss a beat?
If you're going to draft Ladarius Green, it would certainly make sense to go get Antonio Gates. My hesitation with Green, again, is seeing is believing. He's had ample opportunity to sort of make some sort of noise in that Chargers offense and sort of stick,
right,
but he just hasn't. So who am I to sit here and tell you that even though Gates is gone, suddenly Green will be the next, he'll be the next Antonio Gates. I just can't say that.
Right.
So again, he's a player that too you could, if he doesn't get drafted. I don't think he'll get drafted in most drafts. So he'll be a player you can run out and go pick up off waivers.
Okay. One other name that would be awfully tempting is Coby Fleener. Just because he's in Indianapolis, he's known Andrew Luck since college. One would think that would be like a natural machine there. But you look at last year's stats, he had the highest drop rate of qualified tight ends. Like he dropped like 10% of his catchable balls. 57 catchable targets, with 6 drops. So, what's your take on Fleener? Is it really risk reward, or you think there's just too many weapons in Indianapolis to spread it around?
I think that's exactly it. I think they're going to be spreading the field so much so with the wide receivers that they have, plus running backs, that my concern and why I've downgraded Coby Fleener is he gets washed out of this offense. Plus, he's competing with Dwayne Allen, who certainly appears to be the better blocker, so he might actually see less time on the field. And that's why I've downgraded him, and I'm certainly not recommending him anymore as a TE1. And I think you're better off seeing how things go in Indianapolis. I mean, things can change. But for right now, it just doesn't look as good as it did, let's say, before the NFL draft.
Okay, one last name before we go to break, and for the local peeps. We talked about with Minnesota, Kyle Rudolph possibly being a sleeper with a young up-and-coming quarterback, a reliable target. Another tight end that has performed elsewhere but has very mediocre signal callers would be Charles Clay of the Buffalo Bills. What do you think the ceiling is on him? Like, if you had to put a range, is he a 10 to 15 on your rankings? Is he 15 to 20?
I'd say he's more in 15 to 20 right now, and a part of it is part of it is we're not really hearing anything positive about him, and he's dealing with a knee issue right now, and it's hard to tell what his role is going to be in this offense. I mean, we're already concerned about how much the wide receivers are going to get from the quarterbacks, and how LaShawn McCoy is going to do that. You know, for me, Charles Clay, I mean, he was in a better offense last year, I think, with Ryan Tannehill, and I think we sort of saw the best we're going to get out of Charles Clay from there.
Yeah, he only played 18 of 81 snaps in the second preseason game, which, it's the preseason, so he's not going to play them all. But then he got 27 more, and then the Week 3 matchup against Cleveland.
Yeah.
So
there was a lot to get excited about when the Bills signed him. I mean, he's shown flashes. Certainly, I don't know that you could poo-hoo Scott Chandler, but I don't think Scott Chandler was your typical receiving tight end. I mean, he was a big dude. And Charles Clay offered a little bit more, but man, he's hurt, and the quarterback situation is still up in the air. I guess Tyrod Taylor's going to win out. Is that the popular?
That's the vibe right now. But if you look at our lads, Matt Castle's still listed as the starter.
Number one guy.
So,
well, it sounds like Taylor's going to win out, and I think Tyrod Taylor. So far, what we've seen from him has been very positive, and he'll certainly help their offense.
Yeah, the fact that Rex Ryan hasn't committed to one of the 3 names in Buffalo at this point in the preseason should make every Bills fan a little nervous. Just saying.
That is strange. Hopefully we'll see something on this week in this Game 3. Tyrod should get a majority of the work.
All right. There you go. There's fantasy tight ends. Your top 10, Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham, Greg Olsen, Travis Kelce, Martellus Bennett, Jason Witten, Julius Thomas, Jordan Cameron, Kyle Rudolph, and Tyler Eifert. The Eifert Tower. See what I did there? I made up a nickname.
Ooh, that was really good. The Eifert Tower.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about fantasy kickers, because why not? It's fantasy football. We will be right back here on the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour on Late Night Sports Radio.
Maybe I could offer up an free. I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. If I was a snake, I would be so wise. Never let you in. Would my life be terribly nice? Would my poison kill? I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. I should leave you I don't really care if you love me. Hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me. I should leave you fast. I should leave you fast, 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 fast. I should leave you fast.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
The Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour on LateNightSportsRadio.com. Folks, finishing up the Path to the Draft series here. Only one topic left to talk about. That's defenses. Next week, folks. Next week.
And most people would say, why are we even bothering to talk about... one topic to talk about is kickers.
Yes, kickers up next on this segment. 585-633-7487. 585-633-7487 if you want to ask us any questions about your upcoming fantasy draft. Or you can tweet to hashtag AskTFG. That's AskTFG. And we'll get to your question and concern in an appropriate period of time. Thank you very much. And also a reminder to go to Amazon.com and get the Fantasy Greeks Fantasy NFL Draft Guide. It gets you free access to the Skybox portion of the FantasyGreek.com, and it will help you win your fantasy league, almost guaranteed for legal purposes.
Listen to you. Yeah. Just in the search engine, type the Fantasy Greek Draft Guide. It'll take you right there. The Skybox membership gets you to the private part of the site where we do the updates for the guide, and we have things like fantasy points allowed every week and game previews every week and things like that. Just for you, it's a $17.99 value. And I think we're the only ones that offer it, Keith. I don't think there's anybody out there willing to do that. They're looking, get every buck they can out of you.
No, you get the whole package here, kids.
That's
whole package. Not the Magic Mike package, but the whole package. All right, so let's talk about fantasy kickers. And there is a little bit of breaking news in this realm, and that's that Connor Barth was cut by the Denver Broncos and re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to compete with Patrick Murray yet again. Remember, he lost that competition last year. But it's neither here nor there. The kicking duties in Denver now go to Jim.
Shane McManus.
Shane McManus. Now, kicking in Denver usually leads to decent results. Matt Prater used to just be a fantasy god in Denver. But
it's strange, but then he goes to the Detroit Lions, and then he's not so good anymore.
Yeah, so
it makes no sense.
I heard a philosophy that when it comes to fantasy kickers, when you look at the very best and the very worst, there's not a whole lot of difference there. Do you agree with that statement?
I do, but I also agree with the statement. If you have a good kicker, he could do wonders for you compared to some of your position players, and I don't disagree with that. But the thing that I tell people when they're drafting to keep in mind, and why it's hard to draft a kicker very high in my mind, is that every year there's turnover amongst the top 10. So whoever the top 10 were last year, there'll probably be 5 new kickers who will be in the top 10 this year. And some of them won't even have been drafted. So I would sort of, I think hands down Stephen Gostkowski is the best kicker out there, and he's one of the guys you could get with an earlier pick, meaning, 11th, 12th round, whatever. But in general, I think you should try to hold off to the second of the last or the very last round to get your kicker. You're going to get some pretty good guys. I know in some of my mocks I've been consistently getting Mason Crosby, and he's a good kicker. I know he'll miss sometimes, but the reality is he's in a high-powered offense, and they're going to put some points up on the board. And during the break, you and I were even talking about a couple kickers that I think this year could actually things could turn around for them, and I'll mention them right now. The first one is Robbie Gould for the Bears, and I bring that up because the coaching staff is letting him kick field goals in the preseason. That's something you usually don't see, and obviously from the Broncos, they were the staff was never scared to let anybody kick. So I like Robbie's chances of doing better from a fantasy perspective. And another guy that actually showed a big leg, considering he's 37 now, Sebastian Janikowski. We're all talking about how the Raiders are going to have a much better offense compared to last year. That should mean more kicking opportunities for him. So he's a guy that might actually surprise and end up back in that conversation of the top 15. But you don't have to draft those guys. You could sit back and wait and see. Or if you're looking around in that last round going, I don't know who to pick, we'll pick one of those guys.
See, you got to think about the overall team. Like you talked about Janikowski. Now, did you know that last season Janikowski did not have a single field goal attempt under 30 yards?
That would not surprise me.
That offense was atrocious.
Yeah, Janikowski, when he was in a fantasy god, he was kicking 50-yarders constantly, 40 and 50-yarders. So,
2 of 4 from beyond 50 yards last year, 8 of 9 from 40 to 49. Now, the stat that's really surprised me when I'm looking at kicker stats from last season, I didn't realize that the Patriots, and I know the Patriots score a lot of points, but I figured Gostkowski's fantasy value would kind of be undercut a little bit because he's kicking more extra points than field goals. That was my my bias going into this grand experiment. But Stephen Gostkowski had the most field goals made last season. 30.
Yeah, they're not. Again, that's a team that looks at him and says, "Go ahead and kick. We got you in field goal range. Go ahead and kick." And I'm looking at the ADPs for some of these guys. Yeah, you shouldn't be looking at a kicker until late in the 12th, 13th round, and that's for the very top guys, like a Gostkowski, like a Stephen Hushka, Dan Bailey, Adam Vinatieri is very popular, and then the rest of these guys. It just starts going down, into the 14th round, 15th round, and in some 16th round drafts. So nothing earlier. Don't reach. Just trust me on this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Justin Tucker win people games, and you should be able to grab him in the middle to late 14th round.
Yeah, I think what happens sometimes, I've seen it happen in my drafts, is that there'll be a run on kickers.
Right.
And people start getting afraid of not getting a good one. So they'll just do it a little bit earlier and jump the gun, and just got to be disciplined. Stay disciplined, Danielson.
Exactly.
So the second most field goals made last year was Dan Carpenter in Buffalo. Not a really lights-out offense by any stretch of the imagination last season.
He's a good kicker.
Yeah.
He's a real good kicker.
Nick Folk, even though, see, the problem with Nick Folk is that he wasn't very
Streaky.
he wasn't very accurate. He only 82%. 3 of 6 from beyond 50, 9 of 13, 40 to 49 yards. Not very good. Not very good at all.
Yeah, he's a streaky kicker. He's a guy that's tough to sort of look at, and you know.
Who do you have on your in your top 5? What names round out your top 5?
Well, Stephen Gostkowski, hands down. You know, I like Adam Vinatieri. I mean, he's just a generally consistent guy, and he's certainly in a high-powered offense, so he'll get steady opportunities. Dan Bailey for the Cowboys, Justin Tucker for the Ravens, Stephen Hushka for the Seahawks.
Vinatieri missed 1 field goal last year.
It's pretty amazing.
30 of 31. That's just absolutely redonkulous.
Yeah. And it's nice. Half his season he's kicking indoors.
Right? Yeah, it helps a lot.
It helps a ton. It helps, and that's why you look at a kicker like Matt Prater, who goes from the favorable conditions in Denver, and then goes to the favorable conditions in Detroit, and you wonder what happened to you. You can't kick the side of a barn.
Well,
and you're kicking indoors half the season.
He tried to kick the sauce last year, and that's what did him in.
That's what did him in. Yeah, I guess there's something to be said for that. I mean, maybe a year under his belt, and suddenly, plays a lot better.
Well, Prater last year, missed 1 from 30 to 39, missed 2 beyond 50, only 80.8% for the season last season. So you during the break you had a interesting tidbit about kickers and about how there's turnover. You want to share that with the listeners, please?
Oh, I thought I just did. Where there's
turnover.
You could look at the top 10 from the year before, and then look at the top 10 for this year, and you'll see that half of them are different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought I had mentioned that earlier in this segment, but if I did, I'm sorry. Yeah, you see this turnover, and that's why. Some of you could draft a kicker and suddenly say, oh, I'm going to go get this guy off the waiver wire he's been a better kicker because of the opportunities that he's being given and his accuracy. Those situations. It doesn't mean that you don't get a kicker between the 12th and 15th rounds. It's just if you miss out on the top guys, don't panic.
What's your take on bye weeks when you handle a kicker? Your kicker comes up on a bye week. Do you just release him, or do you try to keep him on your roster?
Wow. I suppose that it depends on the kicker. I mean, if I had a top kicker, I would not want to release him. It's easier to release a kicker if they have an early bye week, as opposed to a late bye week, especially a good kicker, because eventually somebody else has to drop a good kicker to fill it. If I have a kicker that can put up 15 fantasy points per week, I will likely keep them and try and find a bench player that I can unload.
Okay. Okay, just wondering your take. Just wondering what's going through the old.
I mean, it's half. I hate saying keep the kicker, but I get it. I mean, they're putting up a ton of points. Why would you want to drop them?
Right. It's just one of those. I never keep a kicker. If it's a bye week, I release them because I'm not worried about, even if it's a good one. I just don't worry about missing those points the following week. And chances are, no one's going to be looking to swap kickers that bad because everyone has the same kind of mentality, I think, when it comes to kickers. So you can more often than not get away with releasing one, getting your bye week out of the way, and then go picking that kicker back up the following week. Sometimes though it backfires, but I've just never worried about it that much. I just wondered if I was the only one. Sounds like I am. So when I'm looking at which kickers I should be targeting, personally, I would want to look at the 40 to 49 stat. What do you think about that strategy?
Say that again.
When I'm trying to judge kickers on who's worthy of a draft pick, being on the wonderful team, whatever wonderful franchise bears my name, I tend to look at the 40 to 49 percentage, the 40 yard to 49 yard range, because most leagues offer you a little bonus for that range, a little extra, maybe an extra point here or there, depending on your league, of course. But also, if they're accurate from that range, it usually means that they're kicking a good amount of the time, and that they'll take care of everything under that should be a given. So if I tell you that's my kicking strategy, my drafting a kicker strategy, what's the Fantasy Greeks' opinion on that?
Well, I'd ask you, how's it working for you?
Well, I won last year, so it couldn't have been working all that bad.
Well, I suppose it depends how you drafted the rest of your team. So it sounds like you drafted the rest of your team just well and made some key waiver wire ad drops. I mean, I can't imagine that it's all because of your kicker.
No, it's not. The kicker was last round. Didn't even worry about it until the last round.
Yeah. I've heard it both ways. I've heard people, just drop a kicker, and I think if you've got an average to mediocre kicker, go ahead and drop them. What's the downside? You go get another average to mediocre kicker.
Right.
If you've got one of the best ones in the leagues, I would hesitate and think if there was a way to try and keep him on my roster.
This is kind of off the beaten path here, but what's your take on leagues that penalize missed field goals?
I think that's fine. In fact, I don't know why more leagues don't do that.
I did that in my league, and I caught so much crap for it every year. Oh, you got to take away the negative points from missed field goals. Oh, God. It was like the second coming of Christ.
I suppose as opposed to the negative points, the fact is if they missed a field goal, you didn't get any points.
Right.
So there's the penalty. So either way, I mean, it's just a scoring system.
I went so far as to if a kicker missed a 20-29, you lost like 3 points.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't just penalizing. It was like your kicker's an idiot, and you're an idiot you're an idiot for drafting him.
I think we've all learned a little bit about something about you as a result of this show.
All right, who's the bottom of your top 10? Who's 6 through 10?
Well, it was Sean Schwisham, and he's not there anymore, so I suppose we'll go right to Matt Bryant, Cody Parker, Mason Crosby, Dan Carpenter, and then why don't we throw in the new kicker, for the Steelers, and that would be who? That would be Matt Prater? No,
Garrett Hartley.
Garrett Hartley. He's going to be on one of the best offenses in the league.
Which he already kicked for one of the better offenses in NFL history in New Orleans.
That's true, and he did have his struggles there. So I suppose you could hold that against him if you'd like. In which case, then I would take Nick Novak from the Chargers. Why not?
Yeah. Is Dan Bailey on your list? Did I miss that name?
Yeah, he's top 5.
Okay.
Yeah, top 5.
Randy Bullock?
No, he's not on my list.
He's got a cannon. He's got
He's struggled mightily. Caleb Sturgis has struggled from time to time.
I didn't realize when you said Mason Crosby, I was like, oh my God, that guy's like Adam Vinatieri. He's older than dirt. And then I looked. He only came in the league in 2007. I don't know why. Why do I think he's like old. I don't know. It's just me and my crazy head, I guess.
I think it might just be that he just seems like he's been around for a while. Constantly hear his name. All the field goals and pick.
There you have it, folks. There's your top 10 fantasy football kickers and tight ends in the first half of the hour. We'll be back next week talking defenses and special teams as you prepare for your fantasy draft. For Jim Sarantias from thefantasygreek.com, I'm Keith Grieve from 87sportsfans.com. We'll see you next week, folks. And in the meantime, make sure you get yourself to Amazon.com and get yourself a copy of the Fantasy Greeks Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Free access to the Skybox, kids. Can't be said enough.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.